What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here bringing you another video. Today I'm bringing you a video on Kamen Rider Build episode 29. This episode was really good. It introduced a whole bunch of different things and it also set up some very important things that will be seen in the next episode. Particularly something very big for Ryoga. He'll be getting a new mode next episode, which is one that a lot of people have been looking forward to, and it will be his third mode, obviously, now because he has a standard charge, which he's been using the most, and then he has a third one which he'll be getting next episode. So keep that in mind. As far as whether or not he'll get another format for that, as of now, no idea, but they may announce something last second. You know, it's still an option, although I would say at this point it's fairly unlikely just because of how late it is in the show. So, anyway, the episode is called The Opening Bell Rings, and the episode begins with us seeing that Namba, he is in disguise as the Prime Minister of Saito, and he actually has some sort of background in conducting an orchestra. So what actually happens is that suddenly we actually see him conducting an orchestra, and in the meantime, we also see that Bloodstark is working with a Pandora panel, and what actually ends up happening is that as he begins to insert bottles into the Pandora panel, the sky wall begins to erupt from the earth and rise up even higher, and this leads to some pretty big devastating consequences where several people that are in the general area are killed or hurt just from the rising of other land formations coming up because of the sky wall rising. So what does end up happening is that all this is occurring, the war doesn't seem to be over. The last episode seemed like, oh, maybe the war's over because now Saito shouldn't be attacking and Hokuto should be getting back to normal. Well, in this case, what ends up happening is that the wall ends up forming this kind of coliseum-like dome in the center, and it's fairly low, but it's interesting. And what ends up happening is that we end up seeing Sento, Ryoga, and Kazumi fighting against some guardians. And these are not the typical guardians that we've seen throughout the show. These guardians are the advanced guardians that are made by the Namba Heavy Industries. And they're called the Hard Guardians, which is similar to the Hard Smash that was used during the arc with Hokuto when they had the Hard Smash that, Kazumi's friends were. So that's kind of interesting to see that now we have that to go off of, that they actually have these ones man-made by Namba's Heavy Industry and all that. So what we do end up seeing is that all that's occurring, Sento actually ends up using Rabbit mode. In the meantime, the other two actually use, cross charge, and also cross Z charge and also grease, which is fine. As far as things go, they managed to do a pretty decent job fighting for a little while, but tons of people were killed, and so eventually they end up having to return to the Totoo Institute. What we do end up seeing is that the Totoo Prime Minister ends up discussing with the Saito Prime Minister, or the Saito Prime Minister, because obviously Namba is in disguise as him, that you agreed that during the that after the proxy battles, Hokuto would return back to normal and this war would end. And what happened is that Namba, disguised as the Saito Prime Minister, basically says that the only ones that actually knew that this proxy battle occurred was us. We're the only people that knew, and that's very important because that actually makes a very big difference in the whole matter, because what actually happened is that the actual proxy battles were not broadcasted and were never made to be known to the people the people in the different parts of the country. So in other words, no one knows about this other than them. Like, that's a definite thing. And so when it comes to news reports and everything, they think that Totoo actually is causing the problems here because they're not giving up their land, and they're thinking that they need to give up their land if they want to keep people alive. When in reality, they should be outraged by Saito's actions because it's ridiculous. So all that's happening, what we also end up seeing, I haven't said this yet, is that Bloodstork ends up putting in the Pandora panel, which has a full set of bottles, into the Pandora's box. And what this leads to is that suddenly a part of the Colosseum-like location that we saw before rises up just slightly higher. So what we also end up seeing from here is that we learn about, we learn about something called the Pandora's Tower. And that's very important because the Pandora's Tower is the same tower that was seen during the images that we saw with Mizora and Sento when they got to see how Mars was destroyed because of the Pandora's box with that big tower in the middle. It's the same thing, only on a different planet now. So it's kind of interesting to think about how that works and how, by opening up this box, you can basically destroy an entire world, at least in theory, which is unbelievable. So all this does end up happening. Eventually, it is clarified that that tower will continue to rise as more panels are introduced to the Pandora's box, and that they have to be mindful of this. What we also end up learning is that Kazumi does not want to continue to fight because he feels like, he's been fighting for so long. He thought that he was gonna get back his people. Things are going to be good, and there's going to be no issues there. As we know, it didn't work out that way. In his case, he's having to deal with Saito taking over and not giving back his land and restoring the peace that once was there. So that's very important, of course. All that is happening. What we do end up seeing is that he actually leaves, and in the meantime, Sento and Ryoga discuss things. Mizora is also brought into the mix of things as well. What we specifically know is that eventually Sento discusses with the Totowa Prime Minister about using money. Now the money, I believe, it's never really used. It's sort of like they set something up, but nothing actually occurs with it. But initially, what it's said to be used for is to kind of convince, Greece to join them. And the thing is that they don't actually use the money that is given to them. In fact, the money, in some ways, I think is meant to be fake or a counterfeit, or it's meant to have multiple purposes in some way, but it's meant to kind of bribe him to join them, although they don't really use it for that purpose. Although at the same time, I kind of feel like there's probably going to be another reason that will be introduced in the next episode. It's very unclear because they kind of introduce this money concept and then it just doesn't go anywhere, you know what I mean? So anyway, from here, what we do end up seeing is that Sento is trying to figure out how he's going to scheme things and make things work so that they can restore peace. In the meantime, we also see that the Saito Prime Minister, which is really Namba, is trying to dissuade his people by every single time someone comes in that doesn't know what's going on. So in other words, someone that's just from Saito comes in and tries to relay information or whatever. What happens is that Bloodstork uses his powers from Mars to turn Namba back into looking like the Saito Prime Minister. So he constantly does that so that the people believe that the Prime Minister is still alive, things are good, there's no issues there, when in reality, things aren't good. The Prime Minister is dead, and we have this murderous, awful dictator. Well, not dictator, but he's just a really bad person, Namba. He's just a very bad person. We actually don't even know if he's really a dictator. He doesn't come across that way necessarily, although he does have the Namba Children program, which, very military-esque and focused on weaponry, so I don't know. But what we will say is that things are definitely getting more and more intense. Eventually, what we also end up seeing is that Ryoga confronts Kazumi again, and that's something that's happened before. Ryoga ends up waiting for Kazumi because he knows that he's going to show up. And so eventually they end up talking to each other. Kazumi's pretty upset about everything because he reflects back on how he lost all those that they cared for so much, and he feels like he kind of, why should he continue with all the trouble that has been dealt to him, and the people that he's lost. And the thing is that we end up seeing Mitten or Mizora end up trying to pledge for people to help out and protect their country, and she's really desperate. And the thing is that, as we know, Kazumi really likes Mizora as Mitten, and so there is that kind of connection where he kind of wants to help out, obviously. Well, all this does end up happening. Eventually, Kazumi and Ryoga are confronted by Bloodstark, the Washio Bros, and also some Hard Guardians. So that's very important. All those do end up showing up. We end up seeing that Ryoga and Kazumi end up transforming into Grease and Cross Z Charge, which is very cool. And the battle against them is pretty interesting. We do see Ryoga fighting Bloodstark at one point, which is very important because he actually uses his abilities from Mars to kind of attack Ryoga. Because in reality, Ryoga is actually still more powerful than Bloodstark is, although for how long is still up in the air. Obviously, we have no idea how long he'll continue to be more powerful. For all we know, he may end up getting a boost later down the line, and we'll have to wait and see how that will work out, obviously. But very interesting to at least know that things like that are happening. What we also do end up knowing is that I'm trying to think what I was going to say. Sento eventually joins the battle. He decides to use his rabbit mode and tries to attack and get involved against some Hard Guardians, and I think even the Washio Bros, and then eventually kind of tries to remind Grease or Kazumi about those that he loves and cared about and may have lost in battle. They're still here. They still want to help out, and they want you to protect everyone. And he basically tries to persuade Kazumi to join the side of Totoro and work alongside Sento and Ryoga and keep working and keep fighting onward, even if he's lost some people that he really cares about more than anything. And what does it for him isn't even them, it's actually Mitten, because he cares so much for her, but at the same time, it could just be him kind of not being so vulnerable and saying that he will help them. Like, in other words, he would help them regardless because of this, but he doesn't want to say it, although at the same time it's unclear and it's never really made clear, and I doubt it will be said in the future. But I do think that there is some of both. It's his desire to stay true to her and his desire to do right by them, because he's learned to really care for them and trust them a lot. Very important. What we also end up seeing is that there's also this aspect of how Mitten is someone that's such an idol that everyone just kind of responds and resonates with her, that when it comes to making people fight and join together or just doing something that she promotes, people are willing to do that. And hearing her is something that he reflects back to and remembers when he was in Hokuto, and they would always watch during their breaks Mitten's videos. So that's very important to obviously keep in mind. What we do end up seeing during the battle that occurs between Bloodstark and the Hard Guardians as well as the Washio Bros is that Sento, Ryoga, and Kazumi end up fighting them. We see the Hell Bros used, which I believe is used by the Remco Bro, which was the same situation in the proxy battle. So that's very important. What we do end up seeing is that with the Hell Bros, what ends up occurring is that Sento and Kazumi end up fighting alongside one another. We actually get to see Kazumi use all three of the bottles that his friends and his comrades had. So he actually uses each one. Two of them are like the two that aren't the castle one are used in the Twin Breaker, and then the third one is used inside of his Slash Driver. So he gets to use all that power and fight against them, and we actually see this like imagery of the three of them actually pushing Sento and Kazumi forward and letting them break through the attack of the Hellbros and manage to, you know, beat the Hellbros form, which it's unclear as to whether or not that means that the Hellbros form is like destroyed or if it's just like a minor setback. In some ways it's likely going to be that it's just a minor setback because, you know, they're going to probably have some way to like send them off, but as far as what that will actually mean, it's unclear. We do end up seeing that eventually Mizora is grabbed by the other Washio bro, and he threatens to basically kill her, although it's not really said, but it's basically implied that he is ready to do that, and Mizora's eyes suddenly change, and she begins to use her powers that we saw in previous episodes. In this case, what actually happens is that it sends the other Washio bro flying, and then suddenly the spirit that embodies her ends up revealing their name, which is Vernage, and apparently Vernage is the Queen of Mars. So yes, in other words, Mizora is being inhabited by Vernage, the Queen of Mars. Very interesting. You know, it makes sense that it has to do with Mars. As far as being connected to a queen or a goddess or whatever, that's a little bit more unexpected, although I did end up hearing about that through some early reveals from synopsises for this episode, so I did know that this was kind of going to happen. I just didn't know like the whole context of the situation. Now I understand things a lot better, and as far as things go with learning more about her purpose, we'll have to wait and see, of course. Aside from that, the episode pretty much ends there. I know there was a couple of jumping around points where I would go back and forth to different points. That's just because this episode had a lot going on in it, and it's sort of like, where does this make sense that I can talk about certain things? So keep that in mind. Again, 29 episodes in. Next episode is going to be very interesting because it's going to introduce the Magma Knuckle. If you're wondering what that is, it's going to be the device that will attach to the regular build driver that that Ryoga has, and rather than working like the standard Cross Z bottle situation that he had, this one will allow him to take the form of Kamen Rider Cross Z Magma, which is his third and most likely final form. There may be one extra form that would be like a final form for him, but I don't expect it at this point because we're already 30 episodes in. We know about other final forms that are coming up and just forms in general that are going to be introduced in like the next probably 5 to 10 episodes or so. So if they decide to like last minute introduce something, fine, but I'm not holding my breath to that, and personally I think that it's like they don't need to do any more, really. I mean, I wouldn't be against them making another form for Grease, but as of now it's looking less and less likely that Grease will get a additional form, and he'll just probably stay as he is, which, you know, in reality isn't a bad thing. I actually think his design's very cool, but I wouldn't mind if they actually gave him an additional form. Just to know that Grease got some sort of power up would be kind of nice. Keep that in mind. I also wanted to just make a brief mention that they did update the opening, and I actually like the opening a lot. Several things were kept intact from the original, but there were also a ton of things that were added because of the introductions of Kazumi, because of you know, the Rabbit mode and the Tank mode now being in the show, as well as what do you call it, Kamen Rider Rogue being introduced. So like all those different factors kind of play into it, and I'd love to know your guys' opinions. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video. I hope you guys enjoy this video, so please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye guys.